some of my guns, this actually shot a little bit more accurate on average than the US military standard issue brass cartridges did. Just how accurate is the cheapest ammo you can buy? Sometimes I'm a sucker for cheap ammo, but it doesn't always work out well. Let me talk about TulAmmo in particular. Is it garbage? Is it functional? Is it worth buying even at the cheap price that you can find it for? I've always been a fan of having quality ammo. To be honest, I've been changing my tune a little bit. I shot 40 groups with TulAmmo. I was using TulAmmo, oh, some junk on that one. I was using TulAmmo's 7.6239 ammo. This is the most common TulAmmo that you can find. It's dirt cheap stuff compared to the other more quality ammunition. So let's just see how the results went. Now I shot 40 groups, and I just want to show you the first several that I got here. So my initial sight in was at 50 yards. I did a nice bore sight because I'm pretty good at doing that with my ARs. I'm using an AR here. Bore sighted, and my first two groups were on this target. I'm going to have to circle them probably so you can see it right here. Now this was my first two groups, my sight in. The lower one was the first group. That was my second group of the day. Now these were both 3-shot groups. My 3-shot groups, 1, 2, 3, and then adjust it in my 3-shot group, 1, 2, 3. This was at 50 yards, just sighting it in. And at 50 yards, I got two MOA groups. Now that was with a scoped rifle, this one right here, actually. Just a nice scoped upper, shooting off of a table, and my rest was a 2x4, was a 4x4. So not the greatest setup, but decent. And I got two MOA groups, 1 inch, almost exactly 1 inch. I measured it with my calipers. That at 50 yards is a 2 MOA group. Considering that I was shooting an AR, which are generally known for a little bit less precision, and TulAmmo, I'd call that decent, but that was also my first two groups of the day. What about after I got a little bit more warmed up and the gun got a little hotter too? How did it do? Well, let me show you my very next group. Also at 50 yards, this one, 3-round group right there, 1, 2, 3. Looks pretty good. That's a 1.2 MOA group. It's approximately 3/4 inches, but the group, because this was at 50 yards, that comes out to 1.2 MOA. One of my better groups of the day, of my 40 different groups. I like shooting an average, see, because you get everything from these really smaller ones to some bigger ones. It gives you a good show of what your rifle can do. So that was not a cold barrel. That was my 7th, 8th, and 9th shot within a couple of minutes. The barrel was getting a little warmer. It seemed like my barrel shot those a little bit better after they got warmed up. Going on, my next two groups. This one here, 1, 2, 3. 3 rounds. That was at 100 yards now, and that's a 1.78 inch group. So we've got sub 2 MOA, or about 2 MOA at 100 yards. Again, we're about at that 2 MOA group. My next one, I just cut these out of the big target so I could show you, and I wanted to pin them up on the wall just so people would look at them. Again, this is actually the exact same group spread. Take a look at this. If I take these two and I put them on top of each other, rotate it a little bit, those holes, the extreme holes, line up almost perfectly. So that is literally, as far as I could measure with my tools, ironically, those groups are identical in diameter. They're both a 1.78 inch group, which I found that ridiculous how I could get 1.78 inches and starting low and curving up in both groups at 100 yards. Intriguing. Now, I shot more groups than that, but at that point I started getting a little bit wider with some of my groups. Let me show you some of the more wide groups that I got. Alright, 4-shot groups at 100 yards. From now on, everything here was at 100 yards. 4 shots, 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's again about a 2-inch total spread at 100 yards, so about 2 MOA. Let's see this one. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's a little over 2 inches. It was closer to 2 1/3 inches So it's like a 2 to 2.5 MOA group at 100 yards. Another one. Oh, this was actually with my 6.5 Grendel. That's a 10-shot group. It's about 2 inches, again, at 100 yards. So we're dealing with ammo that's not very quality, but it seems to, for my rifles across a couple different guns, be holding fairly consistent. Now that leads me to talk about a very basic principle here, and that is not all ammunition shoots the same out of every gun. What shoots decent enough, which I will say, with a crude rest on a somewhat shaky table, 2 MOA for the cheapest ammo I can buy, I will take that for a functionality. Now, it might not shoot as good out of your rifle as it did out of mine. You could get 3 or 4 inch groups. I've heard of and even seen a few guns that, for reasons nobody understands, would shoot more like a 4 or even 5 to 6 inch group out of some of this ammo, and nobody knows why. But if you put it in a different rifle of the same caliber, suddenly it goes down to 2 or 3 inches or less on your 100-yard spread. It may or may not work good for you. For me, in all of the rifles I have, TulAmmo works fairly well. And compared to all of the other European ammo I can get my hands on, especially the steel-cased stuff, TulAmmo tends to be the consistent winner in terms of consistency, and it's considered by most Europeans to be the most consistent of the steel-cased ammo that they're familiar with as well. So let me throw that one out to you. I'll also mention that TulAmmo is unlike Wolf ammo. You might be familiar with Wolf. TulAmmo is a manufacturer. Wolf is not. TulAmmo has produced in a couple different plants, a couple different factories, but Wolf is an importer. That means that they can have multiple different companies making their ammunition and they're shipping it in. So you might get a wide variety if you're not really careful. You might get some 7.6239 that was made by TulAmmo, labeled as Wolf, which I've seen. I also might see it that was made by Barnaul, labeled as Wolf. I have seen some from PPU, labeled as Wolf. I've seen all kinds of stuff. Wolf will take anything basically that they can get their hands on cheap enough at the time. They will pack it in their packaging, and under their import license, they'll bring it into the U.S. Wolf doesn't make anything, but TulAmmo actually makes some pretty good ammo, and in the past 2.5, 3 years, they've been getting better with their quality control. When I pull bullets and measure the case dimensions, measure the bullet dimensions, look at them under a magnifying scope so I can look for uniformity of the jacket, measure the powder charge, they're a little more consistent than they used to be, which I like. It means they've recently upgraded some of their equipment. I'm starting to trust them a little bit more and more. It's not a precision shooting round. This is what I would call, by reason of figure, a 3 MOA round. I would call it a 3 MOA round. And that's because I would be shocked if you bought this TulAmmo, put it in any rifle, and it wouldn't shoot at least 3 MOA. Now, that being said, all my guns tend to shoot between 1.5 to 2.5 MOA with this stuff. So we would call it more like a 2 MOA cartridge, which I'm fine with in my rifles. I've seen some guns that shoot just basic TulAmmo more like 1 MOA. I've seen it. That's an exception. It happens. But generally speaking, they're about 2 to 3 MOA, which for the record is plenty good enough for U.S. military marksman qualifications. And if you're talking about hunting use, yeah, you can hear my neighbor shooting in the background. Target shooting day. I gotta get over there quick. If you're talking about hunting use, 2 MOA, I'm fine with that. I will say, it's over here, it's not like it is out west. I'm probably not going to see a deer farther than 200 yards ever out here because there's just not that much open ground. We have hills, we have a lot of heavy growth forests, there's gullies and swales and swills, a lot of thick woods. Generally all of our shots around here, I'm not really personally concerned with needing to hit a deer at 400 or 500 yards like my buddy Jim Harmer out west. By the way, if you're not familiar with him, he's got a really awesome YouTube channel called Backfire. Awesome gun stuff. Go check it out. It's really cool. But he's got to shoot 400 yards at deer all the time when he's hunting. They don't have much cover. They're in kind of desert and then mountainous desert and then some plains and prairie, they can't get closer to the animals than that because they'll see you coming. There's nothing to hide behind. Around here, where you can't see the animals that far away because there's so much to hide behind. So it's a different way of hunting in a lot of the northern and eastern areas. But just a basic rifle tends to shoot TulAmmo at what I would call a hunting quality, which is 1 to 2 MOA. I will kill deer all day long at that distance. I can, go plinking just fine. It's considered great for military use. Home defense, I've never had duds on TulAmmo. I've had duds on Remington ammo. I've had, honestly, I think that might be PPU I had a couple duds with, and then Remington ammo. Those are the only things I've ever had duds with. I've never had duds with TulAmmo, and I've shot a lot of it. I am going to give you one caveat, and that is this gun right here. Come on. For whatever reason, this rifle doesn't like TulAmmo. And it's not that it's an accuracy issue. They shoot pretty darn accurate. The issue is this gun jams if I'm shooting TulAmmo. I first found that out shooting Wolf that was just rebranded TulAmmo. Now, I've called a gunsmith. There's a gunsmith down in Sparta who's been doing quality work for over 40 years, and he knows a lot. Everybody talks about him. So I called him up and talked. He thinks he knows exactly what's wrong. And that is that the chamber in this rifle is just a little bit rough. Being a little bit rough, with the slightly more textured coating on these steel casings, it would have a tendency to catch a little more. He said, in his experience, that's what he has seen every time, and with a very simple polishing, you can take care of that. I probably should, because honestly, that would probably improve my accuracy with a lot of ammo anyway. Steel ammo, brass case doesn't tend to hang up in something like that scenario because it's soft enough that even if the chamber is rough, it's just going to push through it anyway. It's not going to grab. But these rounds are not quite as naturally as slick as brass. This is the only rifle I've ever seen that had consistent issues with that, and according to my gunsmith, it's an error in the rifle, not in the cartridge. So, that being said, I am very happy using TulAmmo. Now, I've shot thousands of rounds of this TulAmmo in the past couple years total. It's a little dirtier. If I shoot one shot of TulAmmo and one shot of a nice Hornady round, the TulAmmo is going to be a lot dirtier in that barrel. But if I shoot 500 rounds of TulAmmo and 500 rounds of Hornady, honestly, I'm not going to notice much difference in the barrel between 1 and 100 rounds of TulAmmo, and they're going to clean out just as easily as if I'm shooting your more clean cartridges. So it doesn't really tend to, they're dirtier, yes. It doesn't tend to build up in the barrel or cause any throat issues or mess up the chamber in my experience. I just haven't seen that. So for a cartridge that shoots, for me, 2 MOA fairly consistently without shooting from a lead sled, and that's cheap and reliable, I'd use that as a self-defense load. I would honestly, after doing ballistic tests, I would use that FMJ for deer, because from what I've seen, that's going to plow quite a hole through a whitetail if I just hit him in the lungs. All in all, I do think TulAmmo is fine ammo for what you're working with. It's the workman's ammo. It's working class ammo. It's cheap and it's functional. It's not precision, but it works well. And it shoots exactly as good as this stuff here, which, by the way, is U.S. military standard issue ammunition. Brass case, 5.56. This is your M193 made in Lake City at the Lake City plant for the military. This ammo shoots in all of my guns, all of my 5.56s and my 7.62 .39. These shoot equally accurate, about 2 MOA. Some of my guns, this actually shot a little bit more accurate on average than the U.S. military standard issue brass cartridges did. So put that into perspective. I would consider TulAmmo, which to be military grade quality, identical in accuracy to anything I've ever found from any of the M193 or any other military standard issue cartridges. And that makes sense because TulAmmo is made for military use. So it's reliable and it's accurate enough. Now, if you want to go check out my website, guntradition.com, you will find some great articles there, as well as a fairly recent article with a little bit more technical detail about the accuracy and precision that I've got from these steel case TulAmmo. Oh man, I love this pistol. Don't you just love little surprises? What a good thing to keep in your briefcase. So go check out guntradition.com. I have some awesome articles there. You'll see the rifles that I recommend. You'll see some of my very favorite scopes that I think are the best scopes for your money. And you'll see some good marksmanship tips from time to time as well. Check it out, and I will catch you later. Bye now.